Assalamualaikum and good afternoon. My name is Majidah Hashim. I'm from Sisters in Islam, and this afternoon, with me is...
I'm Shanthi Dairiam. I am an executive committee member of a Women's Aid organization, and I'm a former Cedaw committee member. I also wish to point out that I have worked with international standards, especially the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women. I founded the International Women's Rights Action Watch, which works with women's groups in at least 140 countries to facilitate the implementation of Cedaw.
Okay. So today, the PAS MPs have come out to say that domestic laws are not bounded by UN treaties, and this, of course, comes at the back of the backlash of the Sharia caning that was carried out. What's your opinion on this?
I personally don't accept that argument. When you say we are not bound by domestic law is not bound by international standards or treaties, it is an obsession with the technicality of needing to incorporate ratified treaties into domestic law, forgetting the spirit and intention of ratification. We have ratified at least 3 treaties, and primarily we have ratified Cedaw, which provides human rights and equality and non-discrimination to women. What was the intention of ratification? That women will enjoy all human rights and fundamental freedoms. That's what that treaty is about. For me, it is a cop-out by saying that we are not bound, the domestic law is not bound, because we are avoiding our international obligations. So ratification itself, we have to take it seriously and to see how to make it apply.
What are the obligations that we are bound to when we signed on to these treaties?
First of all, human rights of women must be respected, must be protected and fulfilled on the basis of equality and non-discrimination. And that is the vision and the objectives. In order to accomplish that, obligations would be to remove all obstacles and hurdles that will prevent women from enjoying their full human rights and fundamental freedoms on the basis of equality. This would mean the state must respect the rights of women, must not implement or carry out any action or any activity that violates the human rights of women. It must remove all discriminatory laws. It must put in place infrastructure and institutions through which rights can be protected and fulfilled, and put in place policies, programs and services that will enable such enjoyment of all rights, and monitor and gather data on how they are fulfilling their obligations, and report periodically to Cedaw. That is another obligation.
What do MPs need to know about this process of having these UN treaties domesticated?
Again, I wish to say that even without domestication or incorporation, we have certain obligations, and MPs must understand this. We are a party to the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, which provides us with guidance on the implementation of ratified treaties. And in that, in Article 26 of the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, it clearly says that every treaty in force is binding upon the state parties, and it must be performed by them in good faith. So this would mean whether or not it has been domesticated. They must not do anything that conflicts with the principles of the treaty they have ratified. So they must respect that particular treaty. So MPs must understand this, first of all, and not only MPs but also the executive arm of government, as well as the judicial arm of government must understand this, that nothing can be done which violates the principles of the treaty that has been ratified by Malaysia or any other country for that matter. And again, in Article 27 of the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties, it says that a party may not invoke the provisions of its internal law as justification for its failure to perform a treaty. So we have to still honor that treaty. But in order to go for the next step on fulfilling all provisions of the treaty, incorporation or domestication will facilitate it. So once you've ratified the treaty, making that treaty fully enforceable in the courts will be facilitated if we incorporate, and MPs must take that step of domestication or incorporation, because Malaysia under common law, technically under human rights law, international law, requires that step. We are a dualistic nation in the law, where the legal system is concerned. But I also still want to emphasize that we cannot violate any right or do anything that is in conflict with the principles of the treaties that we have ratified, with or without incorporation.
Well, these international treaties, right, why are they important in the first place? Why aren't local laws that we have, aren't they good enough?
Local laws sometimes are, because of the majoritarian rule we have, in Parliament, the majority vote counts, and the rights of certain categories of people or certain perspectives, which is based on culture or tradition or interpretations of religion, may take precedence, and the universal standards of human rights is then set aside, and therefore international standards bring to us and remind us of the need to have universal standards for human rights and not violate anybody's rights on the basis of culture or tradition. And that is why international standards are important. I also wish to point out that we have accepted such international standards by being a member state of the United Nations. For example, the Charter of the United Nations, which is a very significant document, and for which we should be bound. In its very preamble, it says, all human beings are born with equal and inalienable rights and fundamental freedoms. And in Article 1, the Charter says, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. So dignity and fundamental freedoms is a basic principle of human rights. So we cannot say human rights, we are enjoying human rights in this country unless we enjoy it with dignity and all our fundamental freedoms are given to us. To be free of cruel and degrading treatment is a fundamental freedom, which is being violated when we think of the Terengganu case. So as a member state of the United Nations, we have already violated our obligations and under the Charter of the United Nations. So in order for us to protect these freedoms of dignity and fundamental human rights, we need these international standards to guide us and to give us the framework for rights.
But according to Cedaw MP himself, he said that the Sharia caning did not infringe on any of the human rights at all.
Yeah, that is a very backward understanding of human rights, because as I've just said, our understanding of human rights when we take it from the Charter is dignity is a human right, and the caning in Terengganu clearly violated the dignity of the two women. It also, and again in Article 1 we talk about, in Article 4 of the Charter, Article 5 of the Charter, it says, no one shall be subjected to torture, cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. So that is a violation of human rights. What happened in Terengganu is a violation of human rights because the punishment meted out was cruel, degrading and inhuman. So it is a very backward understanding of human rights when you say no human rights was violated, because I also read statements that said that it was done in a very mild manner, it was not forceful whipping, it didn't create pain or harm, physical harm. All that is of no significance, that argument, because it's not the physical pain or harm that we are talking about, although that is also cruel, but the dignity that was violated in public, witnessed by so many people, in front of everybody, an adult individual being whipped. We don't even want animals to be whipped. So it was cruel and degrading. Of course, human rights were violated. Our understanding, the universal understanding of human rights has evolved tremendously in the past, more than past 100 years, when finally the United Nations was formed and the Charter was formed, and also the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was formed. This is almost 100 years ago, and if in Malaysia we are still don't have a clear understanding of what human rights is, we are in a very sorry situation, I'm afraid.
So what can we do now? How do we move forward from here? What do MPs need to do?
Well, we can talk technically about what MPs need to do. Because there is this obsession with domestication and incorporation, it would be a good idea for MPs to move on incorporating the treaties we have ratified into the domestic legal order. I would advise that, so that there is no further argument about this. Although, as I said, if our laws, our policies, our treatment of others violates human dignity, then the treaty will apply. The treaty which provides that we should not violate the human dignity applies with or without incorporation. But we are so obsessed with this incorporation, and in order for it to have the force of enforcement in the courts, it is a good idea to have it incorporated in the and the MPs should move on this, because as a common law legal system, such incorporation may be necessary. But I'm also this is for all people in Malaysia. It will be useful that international standards will apply. But in the case of women, I would also advise that we look towards the adoption of the gender equality law that integrates the principles of international law and Cedaw on equality and non-discrimination, and that's another way of ensuring enforcement. So these two things will be MPs can think about and move on.
Okay. Thank you so much, Shanthi, for joining us this afternoon. Over back to KUALA.
At short notice.